Hey YouTube, I wanted to do a little video discussing my opinion on the topic of thin versus thick liner locks. I haven't heard this opinion before on YouTube or on any of the forums. Maybe I just missed it, but I thought it was about time I gave my 2 cents on the topic. I'm not a knife maker, I'm not a physicist, and I'm not an engineer. My official training is as a biologist, so my opinion is not from experience or professionalism, just how I view things. So let's take a look at these two knives. This is a Emerson MV3 custom with a half moon logo, which indicates that it's from the 90s. So it's an early knife, and it has the thin liner, and it's all one solid piece. This is an Emerson Cqc 22. This represents the newer designs. It's a 2010, and it has the thick lockup, the thick engagement near the tang, but it has a cutout down at the bottom, much like any frame lock or liner lock you would see currently being produced. So here's my opinion. You've heard the phrase or the idiom that a chain is only as strong as its weakest link. And by that, so for example, if you have one link in a chain that can hold 25 pounds and 100 links in the chain that can hold 50 pounds, that chain can only hold 25 pounds, because if you put on 50 pounds, that one link will break. So, given that thought, it is my opinion that these two knives, assuming that the liners, this entire liner, the full length liner, and this thickness, or this cutout thickness, are equal, which I don't know if they're exactly equal. I don't have calipers, and I mean, my eye is not that good at determining these things. But assuming they're equal, then I think that these two knives have the same strength liner. They can withstand the same abuse, they can withstand the same pressure. If you hung a weight off, the tip of the knife, the blades, or the liners would break at the same weight, theoretically, if all other things were equal. But knowing Mr. Emerson, he doesn't do anything without a reason. His form definitely follows function. So that begs the question, why are these liners thicker? And here's my opinion. I think they're thicker because it gives a more consistent, a stronger, and a longer lasting lockup underneath the blade on the tang. So we can see the MV3, the older one, locks up what I would say at right at 50%, maybe slightly past 50%. And the new one, the Custom 22, locks up between 0% and probably 60%. Whereas, let's look at this older one again. This locks up what I would guess between like 40 and 60%, let's say. So what my idea is that if this were to lock up all the way to the right and it was completely laid, approximately half of the blade, half of the tang would still be blocked by the lock bar. So if this locked all the way over to the right, which it won't because it hasn't worn in that far, if it had gone over to the right, the blade would still be blocked by the liner, and you would have a fully functioning, safe knife to use, and you'd have the full strength of this liner lock at the cutout here. That's what I'm suggesting, and that if this lock were to slide all the way over to the right, that maybe only 10 or 15% of the blade tang would be covered by the liner lock, and therefore it has a greater opportunity to slip, a greater opportunity to slide off of the lock face and close. In this case, the lock to close to the left of the lock instead of to the right. So like now it's closing to the right. Possibly, if it locked all the way over to the right, that the blade could close to the left of the lock, and or at least slide forward a little bit maybe, and cause some kind of problems. As an extreme example of another way of looking at it, or a different knife to look at, is this is actually my first tactical knife. It's a Smith & Wesson Swat knife, which is probably about $25. I think I got it when I was like a teenager, like 14 or 15. But you can see it has a thin lock, very thin liner lock. And if it were to slide all the way over to the right, which even this isn't, but if you pushed it over, you might be able to get the blade to fold on the left-hand side of the liner. So yeah, and this knife still works fine, and because it has locked up, it still locks up like right at 60% underneath of the blade, and the steel is adequately strong enough that it hasn't failed on me. Which, I mean, for a $25 knife, I would never have guessed that when both of these knives are over $1,000. So yeah, that's my opinion, that the two locks are equally strong, assuming that the liners at their thinnest point are equally thin or thick, however you look at it, they're equal length and equal width. But that the only advantage in the thick lock bar is that it can safely lock up all the way to the right, or at least more safely lock up all the way to the right than the thin lock. That the thin lock could allow the blade to close prematurely, whereas the thick lock will always block the blade from closing. Alright, that's my opinion. Leave questions or comments if you'd like. I'm interested to see if people agree with me, or if you have different opinions. Definitely leave a comment. I'm always interested in hearing what you have to say. So I guess that's about it. As always, be dressed to play and geared to slaughter. See ya.